I was walking to a dinner last night listening to a song by Mike Posner called a famous song, I Took a Pill in Ibiza. And at the start of this rendition, he talks to the audience, the crowd, and he says, well, he talks about how his dad died a couple of years before that moment, and also his friend Avicii, who's a famous musician. And that he had a list of things that he wanted to do in life that he thought he would get around to once he was finished doing all the things he thought he should do. And I'm making this today because I think I've had a bit of a similar moment. And I partly made one of the biggest, I think, mistakes I've ever made, which is obviously a lesson learning and blessing in itself. But I'm here. I'm wearing the turtleneck I used to always wear, the glasses in the same spot where I started the podcast back in late stages of 2020. And that year was like nothing I'd ever experienced. When COVID started and lockdown began in Sydney, I was very startled to find my life improving immeasurably in every single area at a time when I was most still. And it was a wake-up call. It was a message from the universe, and it was, as I call, a door opening. And it was, to me, a very clear message to stop doing what I thought I had to do and to start doing what really mattered. And that meant focusing less on real estate work, which had been my main focus at that time, and to start addressing what I could do principally around education. The big problem we have in our society of education, which I think is not something many people understand to the depth I wish we understood. I'll leave that for now. But my journey led to the conclusion that a journey to change education is actually a journey to understand ourselves as individual people. I don't know if that makes any sense. Why the hell would that make sense? Education is about upskilling people for the workplace. It's about preparing people for adult life. It's about making sure people be successful. And those are the cognitions. They're the responses. Yeah. I was listening to a talk a few months ago. My friend Tyler, co-author of the book with me, was on this panel talking about social media. And one of the other ladies on the panel had been a teacher. And she talked about her experience as a regular high school teacher and the pressures involved and how it was impossible to have a good quality of life for her and try and help and improve the education system. There's all this pressure around the things you got to be teaching kids, and we love telling schools how much they have to be teaching kids, and there's always something else that they're not doing. She talks about the pressure, the burnout, the stress, the fatigue. What she'd done, she went to what they call a special needs school. My cousin goes to one of these schools. He has autism. And she went to one of those schools for the children who are intellectually disabled. And she started working there. On this call, she described what a revelation that had been. How, because there's no pressure for people to become something, because there's no pressure for them, be smart or successful or have a mortgage or become a favorable image in society, that they could focus on just letting people be themselves and give them a holistic view of life. And it's just a very black and white picture. The irony, the fucking irony of what our world should be and how fucking way off we are and all the dumb things we do trying to build that. And I feel like I have really veered off course with what matters. And I've really convinced myself of a lot of unnecessary things, despite being the guy sitting here in the turtleneck and trying my best to share wisdom. So recently, I've just had the opportunity. What I will say for now is I've had the opportunity to go back to writing, working on a very exciting book project, which I'll be excited to share with everyone soon, focused about the workplace and a satire on the workplace, with a very inspirational man and dear friend of mine. And doing that has brought me back to what I realized in 2020 makes me me. And I returned to I realized how far I deviated from my own principles. That when I started the podcast and the blog in 2020, which to me were just like, they were the first little building blocks. I had to do so much more than that in my mind. And they were just, I had to get them out there. I didn't think for a moment about growing them. I didn't think for a moment about how to get it to this person and that person and make everyone listen. I didn't have this plan for it. It just had to get out of me. And I loved doing it. And somewhere along the way, I got lost again in the seriousness of it. And I got confused. And I was blindfolded. So I think the thing about awareness, I've realized, is that our awareness always shrinks to the size of the room we're in. And I talk to people all the time. I've had the most remarkable conversations. You would not believe, off camera, the conversations I've had in the last 2 or 3 years on this journey of trying to open doors for others. And people have told me things I don't think they've ever told people who are incredibly close to them, who are family, who are friends, who think they know them. And there's this thing I find when I talk to all these people from all these different walks of life. They're not just high achievers. They're not just people who wanted to be part of the concert shooting community. They're just all sorts of everyday people. And you would not believe it unless you've seen it for yourself. But there is a philosopher in everyone. Which is to say, there is a thinker in everyone. There are people have deep moments of clarity where they talk like they're fucking Alan Watts or Eckhart Tolle or something like that. And people have the most remarkable perspective on life. But for most of us, it's in very small windows. And we think that that's the way life should be, that those windows come around every now and then, but that they're a luxury, and that the rest of the time, we just have to do what we have to do. And all I'll say for now is, the journey I've been on tells me that that is not true. I feel like we have a very cosmetic version of life. I feel like we're so far away from creating the real thing for people. We're just so far away. And so I'm putting a pause again to the podcast. It's the second or third time I've done it. I used to, I dreamt about the consistency of it. But I realized that I'm thinking again. I'm regaining clarity. And there is no rush. There's nowhere I need to be or do or anyone associated with this. Whatever this is that we're working on, there is no timeline. There are no milestones. There are no progress dates. There's no rigid plan. There is nothing of necessity or attachment on it. Things will go at the pace they are meant to go at. And for whatever role I'm meant to play and what we are all meant to do together, I've learnt the importance of patience, simplicity, and timing. And so I will be back in some way, shape or form for those, if anyone cares. But it won't be a moment before things are ready. In the meantime, I'll leave a link. The thing that will be live again soonest, I think, will probably be the newsletter, the Dorman, which is a Substack-based newsletter. That doesn't need to necessarily mean much to you, but basically if you want to see what comes next and me fixing my shit up and how I communicate with people, it'll most likely start with the newsletter. So if you are curious at all, you can just, in the show notes or description, you can join that and see what happens next. But my goal is to stop thinking so small, but to reconnect with what matters and to be braver. To be braver and bolder and to improve things. And I guess we'll see what that looks like. In the meantime, I want to finish with a story. This is at the start of Gut Toll's book, A Power of Now. And he's talking essentially to the reader, the audience, the everyday schmucks like you or I. And he says, all I am is someone who walks along while you're sitting there. And you're a homeless person sitting on a box. And you ask me for answers. And I ask you to just check inside the box you're sitting on. And you look inside the box, you as a homeless person, and you find treasure, you find gold, you find all this magical stuff. And you were sitting on it the whole time. You never had a clue. You never thought to look. The nature of the problem you had was that it got you to look everywhere except the one place where the clear as day possible simple answer actually lies. And I share that story as a teaser for what I hope is a truthful and honest and better message going forward. Thanks to everyone who has supported me in any way, who's listened to a second of the podcast, who's read a letter of my writing, who's supported directly or indirectly the efforts of the constant student. We will be back and we will continue on this journey of seeing each and every time what lies behind the great doors of this curious little life. Because the best way to open 1,000 doors for you is to concentrate on opening the doors for others.